ACT.
Yeah.
I'm about to start.
Okay. About this right now.
Hey, do you? Do what you gotta do, okay?
Living color.
You just have to be prepared to suffer the consequences of whatever those actions are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I was so surprised at how he was looking at me. I was talking to him. I was like, do you need to say something? Do you need help? Like, use real words. And he didn't. And then so Melanie started rubbing his head. And I was like, do you have hand sanitizer? And she was like, I don't. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing? And then
I think she's about to sneak me. So she calls my dad, and my dad comes in. He got his big cowboy hat on and everything. And I know he don't know how to read, so I ain't worried about him at all. So he sits next to me.
Now
I don't think people would use the hammer if he was using his gauntlet for evil. This just doesn't make you pure and worthy enough.
That's your phone, though. Y'all, the way I am here for that intro. Do you even know what you were talking about in that? What were you even talking about?
I know exactly what I was talking about. That's why the way it was cut up is hilarious to me. Because it was when we were when Mel and I were out taking a walk and we were at that farm. And remember we were talking about that donkey?
Yes.
She was petting that donkey's head, and he looked just like the donkey from Shrek, or from Shrek, right? From Shrek. And I was looking at him and I was trying to talk to him, and that was where that came from. So I was like,
oh, that's so good.
Yes,
so good.
Yes.
And then to finish off with E and putting down the hammer on his own phone. I'm like, what is happening? What do we do behind the scenes? What is happening here?
Y'all know yourselves. You ain't got to ask that question. You know what be happening behind the scenes. Like, listen, if I'm the agent of chaos, sometimes, like, y'all know that y'all be a little bit over chaos. Like, whatever that is, whatever's outside of chaos, sometimes y'all push the things there. If I come in, create chaos, y'all create mayhem, and I don't even know what to call it. All right. Hey, all right. I can't wait for your special video to come out so we can show the angel. And Cam, you see, she keep making stuff, so we're gonna use this at the end and be like, angel.
No.
Too late.
Johnny, you killed me at the end. It was like, but that's your phone, though. It's like,
yeah, I know, right?
I love it.
It's phone, though. Y'all, what's going on, y'all? We are here.
What's up?
Another Monday. Happy Monday to everybody. And we're here for a real topic. Like, I feel like this is one that is a polarizing discussion. We've been waiting to have this discussion. And it's all about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Ooh.
Are we ready for this, y'all?
I mean, I think so. I mean, you got E, you got an I in your name, and CT, yeah.
Duh, chocolate drop.
Okay, there we go.
No. I'm here for it.
I love it. I love it.
So let's just go ahead and dive right in and talk a little bit about what diversity, equity, inclusion is all about. Let's give the people a little bit of context, a little bit of history behind where it comes from, what it means, and all that great stuff. I feel like when it comes to DEI, though, this is more of like a recent, what's the word I want to look for? Like title or framework, but I think you can date it so far back. So let's go back a little ways. We're going to start off like in the 1800s when we had the Freedmen's Bureau, right? Anybody ever heard of that? Y'all heard of that?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
I will tell you about it. I'll tell you all about it. But basically it was an initiative to make sure that formerly enslaved people had what everybody else had. Right. But afterwards, there was this big like outcry against, from white Southerners who said that they didn't feel like it was really equal and it wasn't fair because they were getting special treatment for being former slaves. Right. Mm-hmm. Fast forward, we have affirmative action. We have the Civil Rights Act. And then, I mean, I'm skipping over many other different things that we could talk about too. Everything from the women's rights movement, from the pride movement, from different challenges that folks who have mental or physical disabilities may face in education or the workforce. Like the list goes on and on and on. But what we now know as DEI really started in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, right? Which we're all aware of. And it was one of those moments that we often say, like, people couldn't overlook it, right? Once it was happening, because this man was being held down for almost 10 whole minutes, right? Crying out for help, crying out for his mother. Like, America couldn't look away. And so, because of that, many organizations, many agencies, institutions, whatever you want to call it, started diversity, equity, and inclusion programs to kind of combat that and put an equal footing across the board for everybody. Now we're running into an issue, the same issue that we faced with the Civil Rights Act, the Freedmen's Bureau, all of that great stuff, where our president, President Trump, has signed executive orders to kind of put all of that to bed now, right? We're trying to get rid of that now at this point. So here we are. 2025, facing some of the same issues that we faced in the past. So that's just giving us a little bit of history. I'm gonna pause there and just do a little check to see, what do y'all think about this? What are some of your feelings? ECT, where should we start this discussion?
Well, I definitely appreciate the context that you provide and the historical nature of what led to DEI, and then the importance of the inflection in time that the death of George Floyd had on society, because something happened in public. It was something that you couldn't turn away from. It was something that you couldn't hide. It was something that on its face, everyone knew was wrong. Everyone in the country finally came together to be like, that was wrong.
Right.
And we should never let that happen to anybody, which created the whole narrative of DEI.
Yeah.
While I have some intimacy within the framework of understanding DEI because of what I do professionally, I've always had a problem overall with it because of what those words mean individually.
Okay.
And in my understanding, diversity and inclusion can work together because diversity and inclusion means everybody and anybody. But equity is not even.
Okay.
Equity is not, what's equitable for one person is not always equitable for the next person. So when we try to diversify equity, how do you do it without leaving somebody's equity at a lower percentage based on what they would want? So if I want blue walls and you want white walls, what's equitable? Like in those scenarios, to give you more walls than I get? Or, do we paint the house completely down the middle, which even in both of our opinions doesn't make sense. It won't look right.
Yeah.
Right. We know that. So how do somebody has to concede at some point, which in turn leaves them out. It makes them feel like it wasn't equitable to them. And that's just the premise of the words. That's not going into the plights of every individual person who would need equity. That's just saying what's equitable based on the wordplay. So I'll stop there and see if CT, because I see you twirling. I see if anybody wants to pick up there.
Yeah. CT.
Uh-oh.
As the songwriter said, let me clear my throat. So this topic, as y'all well know, for most of my professional life, I have not just lived in this space. I have worked, I have educated, I've created all kinds of things that align and connect to one's ability to recognize that the acronym that has been politicized, it's never been the point. But to your point, E, the words that are aligned to it, if you actually had an intellectual, unbiased conversation about the words and how they apply to you, it is not an argument. There's no debate about someone needing, desiring, or wanting to have their own individual difference, not just celebrated, but recognized. And that the fact that no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, even if back as we talk about in our conversations all the time, I don't want to show up to the party. I just want to make sure that you invited me, because I don't want to have the person next to me having been invited to something I wasn't invited to. Even if I don't want to go, I just want to know I was invited. That's
That's right.
inclusion on its face. And then
Yeah.
this context around equity, E, what I've typically found is that people confuse the two E words, equity and equality, because in our country, there is this general sense that we want things and people to have equal opportunity for a
Right.
thing. But in the equality of that equal thing, there isn't fairness. There isn't the ability to actually get an outcome. If I could, Johnny, what we used to talk about in the early days, where the concept of diversity was introduced in the 80s in an educational environment. In that educational environment, in colleges and universities, they were starting to talk about this as a way for individuals to think about who they were in their own identity and how they could actually show up in where it was valued. And then some consulting firms adopted it. And when those consulting firms adopted it, because they worked inside of corporations then embraced it. And they embraced it with this idea that you and I are going to show up in this environment and we're not the same. There were some studies early on in the 1980s, especially on the recruiting side, they used to adjust the way that you hired because they wanted to make sure they could meet the demand of the consumer or the customer and to have different voices at the table. The problem was they used to hire people that fit with them. They used to hire people that sounded like them. They
Yeah.
used to hire people that had the same way of thinking as them.
Yeah.
And it was limiting, especially in a corporate setting, your ability to produce revenue. And so where you had diverse thought, diverse perspectives, diverse education, that's where it started. So the diversity of somebody bringing more than just you all went to Harvard or you all lived in Columbus, Ohio. It was this idea that you had people from different places, had different thinking. And then it evolved into the idea that as the changing demographic of our country was looking like something other than what historically was a white male leader, we used to always say the demand and the requirement that caused us to even have the conversation was there was a customer base that said, I want to see people in seats of leadership that look like me. And then we saw employees who were like, wait a minute, if there was going to be a possibility for me to see myself grow at your institution, your organization, I want to see people that look like me. Not people that went to the same college as me, not people who live in the same city as me, but somebody who actually had melanin in their skin. Someone who actually had long hair and she identified herself as a female, right? It began the conversation long before George happened. Long before George happened, it began to have the conversation that said, how do we create an environment where people could begin to express and share and articulate their difference as a strength in the environment, not as something that was demonizing, not as something that was separating, but it was the very thing that was allowing us to now begin to see business productivity go up. The actual data that Harvard did some years ago that said you get more profitable teams where you don't have just one set of thinking, one set of people, one set of perspectives, where you have a diversified way of thinking about how you would solve a problem, you got better results. Period. Like that was what the thing was all about. And I know we're going to get into some of the dynamics of the time, but as we start thinking about the evolution of this thing, I'd like to do a quick core inclusive commercial. Inside of our core inclusive brand, that's my company, there is something called a core principle. One of the core principles is this thing that says context on the content allows you to comment. When you are commenting on content without context, you are creating confusion. And I believe that one of the problems we have right now is people
Oh,
are commenting
oh my
on
God.
content without the context. And that context has historical significance. And if you remove the history of the thing, then you're only commenting on your proximity to the thing that is in front of you, and you might not have any idea what the what's really going on. I felt my shanana and a curse word about to come out my mouth, because sometimes it gets frustrating in these discussions, because I'm like, well, wait a minute, do you have any proximity or connectivity to it? Or are you just commenting on it because somebody told you something, but yet you have not been able to speak to the lived experience and how it actually impacts you? So I would love for us, I appreciate you saying it. I love for us to talk about the words. And I'm not going to refer to it by its acronym, because its acronym seems to be confusing people. I think it's the words that bring us truly to a place where we're like, oh, well, I can agree upon that. I can align upon that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So I'd love for us to have a conversation about what diversity is. Because I get the general sense that when we have some level of diversity and we don't demonize it around one race, we actually can find some agreement around what the actual
Yeah, that's the thing about it for me. I have mixed emotions about it, but at CT, I think I texted you a couple days ago saying, like, that is the frustrating piece about the space we're in, is like, we're taking things out of context. We're not looking at the full picture. We're also acting like we, and I'm saying we as in the collective we, we're acting like this is a new topic, but yet, I mean, briefly, we just talked about some historical things that have happened in the past, right? All the way from the 1800s. It's kind of, to me, it looks very similar. It's the same conversation. The players are just different, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same, at the heart of it, it's the same conversation. So that's very frustrating to me. And I was watching someone who just recently said what you said too, that DEI, he specifically said DEI, has been so villainized. But there was a poll of the American people, and most Americans believe in the true nature of what it means, right? Of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, we believe in what it stands for. We believe in the values, but yet when you put that label on it, it causes all this ruckus. It causes all this ruckus. It causes argument. It causes, all the things that have been happening lately. And so I don't know. I was just saying that because I agree with you wholeheartedly about everything that you just said.
I love this conversation because, like, both of you are right to say, like, we've been fed words and acronyms as a marketing ploy. Really, I mean, that's what it ended up being, and that's how it ended up being used, which is why now you see people saying, like, let's boycott X, Y, and Z because they're pulling out their DEI programs. Them pulling out their DEI programs doesn't change the products that they would deal with. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that changes the products.
It doesn't.
But it could change that they may not look specifically for these types of suppliers. So, I mean, again, it does have impact. I see it on both ends, but ultimately, in my opinion, DEI, if it was done right and thought of in the right kind of lens, in my opinion, DEI seems to be something that you would create in order to create a place for people to create programs and platforms to help disenfranchise people. That's what it would be. It wouldn't be really run or owned by anybody in particular. DEI, as it should stand, should just be what it would be if it was real, right? Like, if it was a real thing, it would be anybody can do anything for anybody in this way, because that is legal and that is fine, and you're not excluding anybody because you can genuinely speak to a need that somebody's having that you're choosing to help with. And if that is your plight, I mean, your plight, and that is what you would like to focus on, I mean, that should be fair to tell people that if they create programs that exclude other people is wrong. I mean, I have to agree with that. Like, you shouldn't have programs and things that truly exclude other people, because then that in itself disenfranchises those people to those programs. So it becomes a double-edged sword automatically if it's not just a safe space for people to be able to step into and go, hey, I want to help X with Y. Can I do that here in place Z? And then other people are like, yeah, I can pour into place Z with you to help these people. That's what we're going to do. We're going to give them Y, and we're all going to pour into this thing and make it happen. If that was really what's, kind of what it was framed up to be, I think it'd be a lot more understandable, because it would be a framework that people could not always focus on somebody else is getting something that I'm not getting, or I'm being left out. No, the pool sits there and anybody can pour into it. Ain't nobody believing in your cause. That, what I'm saying, that right there might be really the bigger thing. To be like, well, hold on. Ain't nobody donating to the things that you think is needed to be donating. That's on you. You need to go build that type of sponsorship and stuff like that if there's a real need in that way. I think that would be more measurable and more responsible. But again, that's just my opinion. So CT, I see you lead up.
Yeah.
Stop. Hammer time.
Mhm.
Can't touch this. So there's this idea that when we start thinking about like the words, like I'm gonna get stuck, I'm gonna get stuck. Because when you wait, the problem is most people, and I've said this for years, the biggest problem was people kept adding to a thing they had not finished yet. You kept adding letters into a context where people hadn't yet figured out what the diversity conversation was. So if my conversation about diversity in its truest form was about representation, that's what it was about. And that representation was recognizing in the things that I'm having to drive, whether it was societally, whether it was strategically, do I have something that looks representative of the thing I'm getting ready to do? So if I'm making a decision, let's just say as a corporation, Johnny, and I'm going to target, let's just call them women. In the decisions that we're making, do I have women in the room informing the decision? The data would suggest that where I have someone who is a user of a product, more likely that if I am targeting that product towards that person, they're more likely to use it. But if the only people in the room who are having a conversation about its value are the folks who are never going to use it, but it's folks where I think this would be good for Johnny's hair. I don't have hair, so I can't have a real comment on what might be good for Johnny. Oh, wait a minute. I got it. I'm going to go talk to Johnny. And because I've talked to Johnny, now Johnny has been included. Since Johnny's been included, now I know what Johnny needs. And then when Johnny goes to the store and says, this stuff is not going to work for me. So it minimized what we were doing relative to how we made decisions. So when you start talking about this concept called inclusion, and I don't want to go here yet, but it's really important for people to recognize you cannot have true inclusion without understanding exclusion is the whole point of inclusion. But you don't recognize what exclusion is if you don't know who's in the room. And you can't recognize who's in the room unless you got a diverse conversation going on where you're visible saying, wait a minute, it's not just thought, it's not just perspective, it's not just geography, but it is also ethnicity. It is also culture. It is all of those things that when you bring them together, there is genius and beauty and something amazing that is created as a result of it. If I might, can I use an analogy that I love using thank you for permission. So I like to use what I call my macaroni and cheese example when I'm just talking about diversity. So everybody knows, or at least hopefully you do, there's this blue box. Inside a blue box, there's some noodles. It's got noodles and it's got a packet of cheese. Most of the time on a basic box, it's dry cheese. That's all that's in that box. You bring that box home. You take that box out. You take a pot. You pour water into that pot. You boil that water with them noodles. When those noodles have firmed up just as much as you want to, you add the cheese to it. Somebody might refer to that as what? Macaroni and cheese. On a basic level. Nothing added to it. That's not diversity. That's equality. We all have the same box. We all have the same noodles. We all have the same water, and we all have the same powder. But friends and neighbors, boys and girls, one of the blessings of life is that when you add diversity to it, hallelujah, you now can say, wait a minute, Johnny.
Now I got E's macaroni and cheese.
Come on now. I got E's, macaroni and cheese. And in E's, macaroni and cheese, the diversity is I got more than just that dry cheese.
That's
I
right.
might have some spices that go with it.
we
Christopher
do.
loves bacon with his. Like the diversity conversation is what's being added to it so that it is not just the plain old thing. Now, there are some people who love the plain box, and that's okay. The challenge is when somebody shows up and says the only box of macaroni and cheese you can have and the only way you can eat it is the way that we tell you how it's made. And that is why diversity is so deeply important. And if we're not careful, this thing that we're trying to get rid of, we are minimizing the genius and the beauty of what diversity brings to our every single day. So when I think about the blessing of what diversity is, it's that even on this conversation, you have hair, I do not. We are all wearing glasses, but the glasses we have are different. We all have microphones, but those microphones are different. The microphone is the thing that brings us together. That's the thing we have in common. But the different kind of microphone that we have is the diversity of what we bring to the conversation. And that is what I don't want us to have to miss when we're doing what we do. Yep, Chef Boyardee, it was nice. But boy, Melanie made that G. Garvin 5 cheese mac and cheese and changed my entire life. So I think, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I think where I'm getting, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but like, what now? So that's great. I'm with you, CT, on everything that you just said. I understand what it is. I know the purpose. I know all this and that, but what now? Like, where do we stand now? Because you have companies who are strategically removing the words DE&I from the documents, whatever. Maybe even adjusting programs. Some programs will remain, but now we're just going to change the name of it slightly because we still got to do what we have to do because maybe it's good for business. Maybe it's just because it's the right thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a little mix of both. But like, I think some of us may feel like, well, what do we do now when I get dressed in the morning and go to work and I know that it's important? What can I do in the spaces I am now? Am I
Johnny,
boycotting at all?
Johnny,
Am
that's
I
the whole point.
boycotting companies?
Johnny, that's the whole
Am
point.
I,
Johnny, we're that respectfully submitted. What you just did is what's happening. And that to me is the problem.
what?
We've moved to solution. What do we do now? We still don't know what we're talking about. We still don't have this. You and I, like you're like, CT, I got you. But I feel like there's listeners that have no real context for like, what are we actually still talking about again? Like people want to move the solution. We can go on the boycott, but yep, it's fine. I'm just going to be me, right?
Like, and I was just throwing the question out there theoretically because I know what I'm doing, but I also feel like there's some of us who do know exactly what we're talking about.
Most don't.
But some of us do. So then like what, I guess I'm just saying like, what now? Is that the answer to, because I'm not necessarily the person who says, yes, I'm going to boycott this certain company because I know it's a lot of nuances. I need to be strategic. I need to do all things. Okay, fine. But like some of us are doing that because we feel passionately about it. So I don't know, like what, and yeah, I don't know. Because, okay, I'll say this. To some of us, CT, some of us feel like we've been talking about it for a long time and we're tired of talking about it. And it's time to move to solutions. Some of us feel that way. Some of us don't, and then there are people who don't know. That's fine too. So like, I don't know. And hey, maybe we don't have the answer right here, but
we're solving world's problems. We're solving all of the world's problems on this pod today.
Let's do it then, right? Because some of us are tired of talking about it. Some of us understand the history. Some of us know what all the words mean and everything is like, okay. But right now, there were executive orders that were signed, but I still have work to do. So what should I be doing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know that I need to do anything different personally. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
me personally, I don't think I should be doing anything specifically differently outside
Yeah,
of
that's fair.
still continuously being a good representative of my people,
Yeah.
trying to educate myself in the ways that I need to so that I can be aware of the disparaging treatments, and the bias, and the fact that, to your point, like CT as well, like we don't always have a full understanding of why something is the way it is, and we react emotionally because somebody just took something from us.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, yeah,
Yeah.
we turn
Yeah.
into the babies
That's
that
the way
be
to
like,
put it.
"You took something. Oh my god, you done took my thing." And now we like, we're gonna boycott Target. I'm like, Target has my hair products. Otherwise, I have to
And no
order it
one else
online.
does.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, I have to
And
order it
where am I gonna
online.
go?
Then
Amazon?
I'm away.
Like,
Yeah. Like, right. So, but
yeah.
like, and for how long? Because I
Mhm.
can get my hair products and Starbucks. And are we boycotting Starbucks? No, not this time. Okay. Because, like, remember, we had boycotted them before. Remember?
They were just on the
See,
list, right?
see what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
Like, and it's like that, where it's like, well, hold on, remember, we had boycotted Starbucks, but we go there now, but now it's Target. But is that just today? Because if I go back tomorrow, like, we create these fights that, to CT's point, like, they're endless spats and things where it's almost like children just reacting to stuff where they don't really understand what they're reacting to. Is just somebody took their binky and they about to flail out and floppy fish, and you like,
Which I also understand too.
yeah, I get it.
It causes an emotional response, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I get it, and they're not wrong to act that way. You know what I'm saying?
But we sitting
I
out
don't
here
know.
acting like DEI was something that we owned, that belonged
It
to us.
wasn't.
It
It
wasn't.
never was.
It never was. It
Yeah.
never was. We just took ownership of it. And part of the reason why we've taken ownership of it is because, culturally speaking, Black people in this society are the ones that take on the hardest of things,
Yeah.
whether we want to or not, and we try to make it so that everyone can feel included. I don't like that language there, but let's just use it for the
That's true.
conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You feel like everybody wants to be a part of a thing, and then others can then benefit from the work that somebody else did. And now, because it feels like something's being taken away because somebody else felt like something was being taken away from them, when in truth, it's always been about what you're adding to the conversation, not what you're taking away from somebody else who didn't ever want to be a part of the conversation, or they didn't want to be a part of the conversation that was being had because they were already in it. Like, some of what you find in the work that we've done over time is that there was this voice that wasn't being heard. And because it wasn't being heard, the decisions that were being made, people were being left out of the opportunity. The Horatio Alger story that was like, hey, you can be whatever you want to be in this world, in this country. And the truth of the matter was, you could say it with your mouth, but your experiences were not out there, so you could. That's a fact. And anybody who wants to argue a point that says that's not true, they're not proximate to an experience that says some opportunity that I could have, I didn't get, not because you weren't educated, not because it had more to do with what was happening in our society. So you had to create these systems, these programs, these pathways, these laws, these amendments that were representing peoples who didn't have a voice.
Yes.
So a part of the challenge, I'm like, for me, is this idea that, like, this thing that we think we've always had, we never actually had a grasp on it. We were simply the carriers of it. We were the administrators of it. And now that it was being used in a way that was actually helping multiple people, it's being placed in the conversation where there's only one people that seem to be the ones that were carrying it, and that's not true. So when we start boycotting something that's not ours, this is Christopher talking, I feel like you're missing the broader strategic conversation that we should be having around what are we missing in the discussion that we're having about what we're actually wanting to accomplish together.
That's very fair.
And together doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be just Black. Together is a whole bunch of folks that are like, wait a minute, my voice is not being heard here because my voice isn't being heard here, but I'm being impacted by the thing that's being done. Time for us to do something.
Yeah.
What does that do something? Who knows?
Who knows? Right.
One bite at the freaking time, right? It's like sometimes you got to do a thing to find out whether or not it's going to or not going to have an impact. and you do it in a way that says, okay, this thing that I'm doing will have an impact on the people who are making the decisions that are impacting me,
Yeah.
not the decisions to do the thing that's impacting the people who actually need help too. And
Yeah.
you know, geez, I tell you what, like I've got a whole
Yeah.
headset and a soapbox about this current moment because I've been doing it a long time, and
Mhm.
I've watched it evolve, and I've watched diverse people be passionate about it, and I'm like, the passion that you bring to it is not going to help it grow unless it is embed into something
Yes.
that actually can't be extracted.
Yes.
And what's been true
That's
is that
perfect.
when George Floyd happened, a bunch of companies responded to thank you, E, to what they saw, and a
Yes.
society and a community of people who were like, that was wrong.
And you
Let's
couldn't
now
look at it.
galvanize around it. Let's do some things, add some
Yes.
programs, but that was never embed into how they were doing what they were doing. So it was always something that could have been extracted from you at the moment society changes. We're in the same moment now. So as easy as it was pushed in, it was
Yep.
easy to be able to be pulled out because it was never a part of the strategic thing that somebody was actually planning. It was just you put some dollars, some cents, some marketing around it to allow people to know that there was something that you were meeting them in the moment. And now what you're doing, you're meeting the moment. You're meeting the narrative of the moment. And it doesn't feel good, but it is how our fickle society tends to function.
I know, our
Yeah.
fickle society, don't get me started. But E, I wanted to say that all of that was so good, y'all. And when you said, E, that, you don't feel like personally right now there's anything different you have to do, I'm sort of with you there. Like, I know that there's a lot of work to do and there's a lot of things that I want to do, whatever. But I made up my mind a long time ago when I started my career. I said a long time ago, like I'm so old. Sometimes I feel like I'm really old, but I made up my mind that I was just going to do my part.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, right? So I think I've said this before here in our on the pod. When you hear folks talk about the civil rights movement in particular, they always say like everyone mattered. Everyone had a job to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes your job was marching on the front line. Sometimes you were Martin Luther King Jr. Other times you were at the church
Yeah.
waiting for them to come back. You were cooking. Sometimes you were cleaning. Sometimes you're watching the kids. Sometimes you was, getting petition signs. Whatever it was, everybody played a part. And I think it's important that at times like this, when we feel powerless, to her point, when to Simone's point, when we feel powerless, that you remind yourself of what your work is, what your purpose is, and what you can do in your own lane. Sometimes it is as simple as just having meaningful conversations with your children to
Yeah.
make sure that they are educated, they are aware of our history, they are aware of what's happening in society, and being good people. Sometimes it looks like that. I don't know. But just remind yourself of what your purpose and what your calling is, then we won't always feel so powerless because like I said before, I feel like history repeats itself and we come
Yep.
back here again and we're having this conversation again and we'll have it again.
Yep.
Right.
Well.
We're going to have it again. Our kids are going to have it again.
Sure.
So just kind of reminding ourselves of where we're supposed to be or what our work is.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Should we answer some of the stuff that's I think?
Yes, I was gonna say, let's go. Hey, Cam, can you pull up some of the questions that we got? Let's go back to the first one, I believe. Is DEI the same as affirmative action? CT, is DEI the same as affirmative action?
No.
What is the
What's
difference?
next?
What is the difference?
Affirmative action was designed as a policy-based approach for you to be able to think about correcting historical inequities that existed primarily in hiring and selection. It was this idea that we needed to create a system that was inclusive of others because they weren't being included. That's probably the most simplistic way to use it. And most of the time it was in hiring or employment or in the college context,
School selection
admission process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it was this ability to say, and it always had the goal was always that it would be sunset. The problem is still existed because the practices and the decisions that were being made in corporations and colleges, etc., were still exclusionary and not allowing others who had different experiences to be included in the conversation. DEI was a broader framework that was lifted to bring an amplified conversation and discussion around, and most specifically in corporations and companies, right? Let's be really clear where it got life. It got life inside of those spaces where somebody was like, well, wait a minute, I have a different set of individuals who are showing up in my workspaces, who are showing up in my environments, and how am I helping to make sure that they feel like this is a place where they can have their need met, not just show up for their job? The broadest level of that framework. There's nuances all in this answer, but the distinctive difference was DEI has been and never was about selection, has been and never was about excluding someone. DEI, its broad framework, was all about creating an environment where most people could find themselves in whatever it is that they were in. They could find themselves in it. And so if you were in an environment where it was all Black people and you were white, DEI helped you find your voice there. If you were someone who had a disability and you were in an environment where there's no ramps, DEI helped you make sure you could get a ramp. If you were a pregnant mother and you were in an environment where you needed to feed your baby, hear me when I tell you, it was a broad framework that was enabled inside of some ecosystems that weren't speaking to people and their ability to recognize how they could have their needs met in the environments and ecosystems that they were in.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that all right?
Is there another one?
Yeah. Let's go to that other one. Johnny, this is for you. Are boycotts a response to feeling powerless? I know you started to answer, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, I did. I'm glad we pulled it back up. I mean, I think so. Think so, right? We realize and again, this is specifically towards our Black community because this is where I heard this the most, right? About boycotts and response. Because our dollars matter, where we spend our money matters. It definitely does. And I think it does come from oftentimes feeling powerless, like your voices aren't being heard. And we're tired of seeing it over and over and over again. This conversation, we're talking about DEI, but like we've said it so many times in this conversation that there's so much prior to that and it will be after this. And so I do believe that oftentimes boycotts are a response to us feeling like we don't have a voice. And it's like, oh, for people in order to get attention, we got to do something. The problem is just that it's a lot of nuance around that. We have to make sure that we are strategic and we are careful about it because, and I'm just going to use Target as the example because that is what we heard the most recently. So if we do that, and the EU just said it. So if we did that, we all boycotted Target. There's some products that I absolutely need that only are sold there. Okay, fine. Then where do I go then? And what happens to the, let's just say the Black business owners that are selling their products there? What happens to them? Right. Okay. And then where we're going to go then to Amazon because they've had issues too. Right. If Walmart has had their issues as well. So the list goes on and on and on and has been historical. So like we just have to make sure that we're doing it in a right way and making sure I guess I think that's what I want to say. That is the right way of doing it. I get it though. I get it, right? You even heard Tabitha Brown. She came online and said like, yo, I can't tell you not to do it because I totally get it. But what does that mean? Right?
So I'm going to ask this question to both of you, and it goes to the heart of today's conversation, which I think Mel kind of touched on. Like in our last episode, it was Valentine's Day, and we talked about Valentine's Day being started because of a martyr. When we think of DEI, it kind of started because of a martyr. But if you can revoke it, does that mean it really didn't have any bearing? Was it DOA? Was it the moment that the acronym was framed up and the box was set? Do you guys think it was truly DOA? Dead on arrival, for those that don't know.
I know. And why, when I first saw this, it took me a minute. I was like, DOA. Oh, Johnny, get it together. I'll just share my thoughts briefly around that, and I'll let CT take it from there. So it's just a larger okay. So imposter syndrome. Okay, I'm switching topics a little bit, but I'm going somewhere here with this. So there was this article about like, stop telling women they have imposter syndrome. So the whole idea of imposter syndrome started back, I think, in the 70s. It wasn't quite called that yet, but they were studying women in the workforce, like around in the 70s, and asking them how they felt about being in the workforce. Like, do you feel inadequate? Do you feel like you don't belong? Do you feel, and the women were responding like, well, yeah, I do. Yes, I do. All the stuff. And so as we begin to study it a little bit more, these particular authors were saying like, stop telling women that they are, or any marginalized group, that they have imposter syndrome and it's something that they have to overcome, when in fact it's the system that has created an environment in which you may walk into a room when no one looks like you, or, that there's not a restroom in the entire building for you. Well, yeah, I feel like I don't belong because it wasn't created for me. I literally don't belong, right? Yeah. And so when we think about things like DEI, I think there's a bigger issue that needs to be addressed, and that's why we keep coming back to it. Right? We keep coming back to this conversation because like the country that we live in has created some systems for other people not to thrive, not to have equal opportunity. And that is why those programs, that is why these amendments, that is why all these things have been put in place to help combat some of that, because the system, I'm going to use that word system, wasn't necessarily made for certain individuals to succeed, right? And so I think it's a bigger conversation when it comes to that. So when you say, was it DOA? I don't know, but that's where my mind goes to. I don't know. I'm getting tired. That's where my mind goes to. I'm like, y'all, we have so many things to kind of, to CT's point, like we have to address, and so many wrongs that have to be right for those things to carry some legs, to actually work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, yeah. I definitely know what you mean. So, I mean, I can understand why it's a hard question when you think about the complexity of the history behind it and everything. Like, and then, what galvanized it is like, really? Do you like? I'm sorry. Like, we've had a lot of singular deaths that have galvanized us to certain messages, but those messages have not truly changed the culture of the place that we live in. Yeah. So it's that hot flash in the pan moment where people care about it because it's relevant today, and then it goes away. But CT, I'm gonna ask you, was DEI DOA in your opinion?
Absolutely not. There are some people who could say it's DOA because it was never alive for them. So just like civil rights aren't dead. You just don't hear about it. It's morphed. It's adapted.
Yeah.
That's the genius of who we are as humans. We've adapted. We've evolved. And some of what happens is that people get so excited and get married to the term, the thing that they think will be the transformative thing in their lives. And then somebody comes along and squashes their terminology. And if you believe it to be real and true and necessary, it's not dead. It just takes on a new form. I have been married for 26 years. I am not the same Christopher Thompson as I was back in 1998. I am not the same Christopher Thompson that I was in 2007. And so DEI, however you want to define it, it ain't going away. So you can fight it all you want to. You could do an executive order. You could do an amendment. And at the end of the day, the principles and the foundation that comes with humanity and why humanity needs it, it ain't going away. It's just going to evolve. And it's going to take people to don't give up on the true principles of our humanity that are going to require us to, and let me be a Christian for a minute. Jesus, I remember when I was growing up, y'all, there was a song that we used to sing in Sunday school that said, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white. They are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. I'd like to suggest that DEI is the language of that song. And that whether it is someone defining what that color is, I don't see color. That's fine. Jesus did.
That's right. That's right.
I'm going to too. And when we think about why it's not DOA, is because there is somebody that's going to show up at some point in time and say, wait a minute, I'm not getting something that I need. And the principles and the foundations that come with DEI are going to be the thing that'll be lifted, whether you call it DEI or not. Mm-hmm. That is just the struggle of a society who is trying to constantly find itself in language that it does not know how to define. Yeah. And when you have people who are trying to figure out how they can stay included in a conversation they were never a part of, or somebody who's been included in a conversation that they're no longer feeling like they're being included into. Not a zero-sum game. This really is a discussion that says there is something in it for all of us. And if we actually don't get in our own way, we might actually find that it is not DEI. It is, I'm not going to make up nothing new right now because that's proprietary. Core Inclusive Consulting will be sharing it at some point in time in 2025. Yes, you can pay for it then. No, I'm not going to give it to you now. But there is another way. There is another way. Yeah. There is another way. So.
Okay. All right. So I do want to address the questions that we have in the chat, but before we do that, and this has been a wonderful conversation. I want to switch it up a little bit, switch gears, so we can get into something, a little bit more fun, and a little. It's a relevant topic as well because our good friend P is under the weather. Today, so she wasn't able to join us. Shout out to P. Yeah, she wasn't able to join us today because a little under the weather. But I want to kick it into the pretty lies and the ugly truth.
Oh, I love it.
All right. So welcome to the Pretty Lies and the Ugly Truth. In today's conversation, we're going to talk about some of the fun things that happen in whether you're being honest about how you feel in these moments, because we want to talk about your winter woes and them summer oh no's. And I'm going to give you some examples of what those are. Okay. So right now, this week coming up, Johnny, I think you're traveling somewhere, right? Yes.
I am.
And in this particular weather, when you get there, is this going to be one of them, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here and I'm ready to go? Or is this like, oh my God, I have to go somewhere, and because of the weather, it's a whoa? I'm just asking.
Whoa. I'm so sad. Yeah. I know I'm whining about it. I feel like when my sister visits Ohio and she's like, oh my God, I'm never coming here. So I'm going to Texas this week, which I enjoy it. I've talked about it before. I love my team. So I love hanging out with them and doing the work we do. But I feel like I'm from Ohio. One of the benefits of traveling to a southern state is what? The weather, besides the food. The weather.
Yes.
It's going to be snowing. It's a possibility it's going to snow. And I got an email today that said, you guys dress accordingly because at one point it may be below zero. I was like, what? So it's a, oh no. It's the winter of the woes. Oh no, whatever.
It's both of them now.
No, that is Johnny. When you get there, hey Johnny, how you doing? Your answer, is it going to be a pretty lie or an ugly truth?
Exactly. You already know you tell them ugly truths then, because that's what you're going to tell them. Like, I don't want to be here. Yeah, I won't be here. Like, I could have stayed home for this. I could have zoomed in and froze.
Thank you. Y'all said it. So I'm mad about that. I got an attitude, y'all.
Oh, listen.
Okay, so that explains the winter woes, but we're gonna talk now. I'm gonna give you an example of a summer oh no. CT, let's talk about when you were in Destin, having so much fun, enjoying yourself on the beach, having our wonderful little drinks in the specific spots that you enjoy. When you're in those places, if let's just say hypothetically, you was to look over and see a sticker of your face with the doll put on it. Would that make you happy in the middle of your summer? I'm just playing. No, but I'm just saying though, like for the summertime, there be those moments where you're in your happy place in CT. Somebody calls you to be like, hey, X, Y, and Z, and you like, hold up. Oh no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing none of that because I'm in my happy place right now. Now, you may not tell nobody that you're not going to do it. You might come up with some, great reason why you don't do it, but it's because you're in this very content, happy, comfortable space where you're like, I'm not giving that up for nobody. That becomes your, and that typically happens for some people in the summer. So that's why I'm calling it the summer. Oh no, I'm not doing that. Do you have any examples of summer oh no's, CT, that you was like, the way my day is set up, no, we ain't doing that. But you didn't tell them the truth. You told them a pretty little lie. CT, is that something you've done before, sir? And you got friends that watch. You got friends that watch the show, so they know that if they. This would make.
I'm doing my left hand, not my right one. Hi, my name is Chris. and sometimes I pretty lie.
I pretty lies.
Okay, I love it.
Let's be real clear. And it's not even summer. This is Thompson and I. Melanie. Let's be really clear. We want to be there in the winter. Like, let's be all the way clear. If we could be in Destin all the time, we would be in Destin all the time. And if somebody was like, hey, will you come? Like, so the truth, right, is we didn't, because we started the business, right? We didn't go to Destin for our snowbird thing, right? And that was we've had a woeful winter. Like, being in Ohio is not all okay. Woes. And like what we talked about when we first came, like at first episode when this season was like, it was good to see family and it was not good to see. If we could have been in Destin and we FaceTimed you, it'd have been better. That is the ugly truth of how we now want to function and live our lives. And so there are decisions that we're needing to make that are directly aligned to being able to tell ugly truths. Like I'm convinced since we picked up on this particular segment that I'm changing the words. Like I need to tell more ugly truths.
Come on.
I need to tell more truths, right? I feel like it's more free to tell an ugly truth than a pretty lie. It just feels better. So I commit. Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm gonna tell more ugly truths going forward.
And I don't even think they're ugly. When you start telling them truths, they ain't ugly. Not at all.
No. They can be ugly.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's freeing. It's freeing for you, but like to the person like that you saying it, sometimes you say something that's true and people make the ugliest face. You be like, what did I say? You be like, did you just say that? I'm like, yeah,
that's okay.
I did.
Sometimes you need to hear it.
Yeah, see, I just want y'all all to pay attention to Angel Johnny versus the I say it. It's all right. It's okay.
That doesn't make you bad because you tell people the truth.
I didn't say it made you bad, Johnny. I never said
you said Angel versus like.
I didn't say. I just said that there's some complexity to it where we can't just be like Angel because an
angel tells the truth.
Do they?
Yeah. What, they gonna lie? Angels lie. Lying isn't good. Angels tell the truth.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say that.
And you're an angel, Johnny. I just want to make sure that we're.
Yeah.
I don't know why this.
Yeah, keep doing it so we can have footage of you doing it. All right, guys, just so you know, Johnny just told a pretty lie.
Real time example.
Hi, my name is Ian. I just told an ugly truth that Johnny just told a pretty lie.
I love this segment.
All right, so what about people who lie about the weather? Because the weather is one of those, oh, trust me, it happens all the time where it'd be like, oh, yeah, I ain't making it because it's raining. You like, but you got windshield wiper blades. Like you drove in the rain all day long, but you ain't coming out because it's raining right now. Or people like me personally, you know, because we live in Ohio and people complain about the cold, I'd be like, you live somewhere that is cold for almost 6 months in the year. It's almost 6 months that we're cold. So I'm gonna need you to understand that half of your time it's gonna be a little chilly, half of it may be a little warm and nice. That's what it is. And there's some times that you can have all of it in one day. That's what Ohio does. I've been outside where it rained, snowed, sunny, and rainbowed, and it was hot at the end of the day.
That don't make it terrible, though. I mean, that does not keep it from being terrible, I should say. You can still complain about it.
Yeah, I mean,
what about the people who in the wintertime in Ohio are walking around in shorts and flip-flops?
I love them. I absolutely love people who are immune. No, I love that. If you have cold immunity and you can go take the trash out in flip-flops and shorts, then you are a soldier. We need more people like you because when all the lights cut off, we're going to be sending you outside with a little bit of Hey, don't you dare give him some pants.
People in the apocalypse.
Yeah, that's right. We don't need no sweatpants or nothing below the knees because he been going outside for years, freezing his toes off, taking the trash out. He should be okay. He's a soldier. He's ready for this. I think that's wrong, but I'm just saying.
That's the young people now. The young people don't never dress appropriately.
No.
We always got to tell my kids, put on a coat. It's cold outside. But then in the summertime, because it's always cold in the building, my daughter will walk out with Allie will have on a hooded sweatshirt, a shirt on top of it, some jeans. Terry, like, if you don't go back upstairs and put on some summer clothes. You look like a fool.
I got one for you.
Okay.
In the context of the conversation, like let's pull the thread on the DEI. What's the pretty lie and the ugly truth of DEI?
Well, to me, the pretty lie was equity. The ugly truth was equity.
What do you mean by that, E? The EMM family wants to know what you mean by that.
The lie is that things can be equitable for everybody. The truth is things can be equitable for everybody. Like, but to what degree though? You know, like for instance, if I take all three of us and I'm like, we all go out to eat, okay? And they put one plate in front of us. Johnny may not want to eat the same amount as CT and I, but we only got enough room on one plate to feed everybody. Yeah. So how do we make sure everybody gets what they need? Well, first, we got to order the right amount of food. To your point, CT, knowing, right? We got to order the right amount of food so that everybody can get at least the basis of what they want. And that means there's a decision on how we going to put stuff on that plate. Mm-hmm. And because we can make that decision on that one plate, we can make equitable decisions that don't always equal CT gets the biggest portion of the plate because CT may not need it. And Johnny may want the biggest portion of the plate because we're going to share the vegetables that she going to be eating and the steak that she may want, right? And I may not be that hungry and I could just have the bread, right? But we all ate off that plate that one time because we all chose to choose what was equitable for ourselves in that moment. So I think like that's the truth and the lie to me, where it's like it can't be equitable, but at the same time it can be equitable. And it's just that, you know, that's just the insanity in E when I think about, because that's the whole thing. Like when I think about the funnel of DEI, I'm like, well, the I and the D seem to work. Like you can play around with that like all day. You can make that work in every single way. Like, all right, but the E.
That reminds me, E, of that, y'all seen that video? And of course, I can't remember what it is exactly, but you have like the students lined up and they all start on the same starting line.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then you take a step forward if this has happened. And then like you got to, you know, if you've
$100 race.
ever had to like go hungry or didn't have breakfast, you know what I mean? And so it just shows what the importance of equity, that because everyone is not equal,
Mhm.
and it shows the importance of equity. That's what that reminds me of when you're saying that.
Yeah, but
It's not
that's what it
fairness.
is.
Because I can't
It's not
remember.
fairness.
It's not fairness.
Sameness.
No.
And people
Right.
keep wanting to amplify the ugly lie is that we have it.
Yeah.
Right. And I appreciate that with you, E. Like this
Yeah.
idea that people think that the plate is the same. Here's the rub. Here's the tension. There has been somebody who has been at the table, who has had access to everything at the table. And now somebody is coming along and saying, you need to share what's at the table. That person then says, but I've had access to all of this at the table. You know what? Oh, it's cool. I'll share it with this person and this person and this person. That's cool. But you only get this much. And you only get this much. And you only get this much. And what might be missed is that how you are divvying it out, somebody might need more than the other.
There it is.
Because of how they're made.
Yep.
But it starts with the person who's divvying it out.
Exactly.
And if you don't change that paradigm, then you have all the people who got what was divvied out fighting over the portion they got divvied out and not actually focusing on who divvied it out in the first place.
Exactly.
And the inclusion part of the conversation is when you have the table, you're like, okay, let me bring some people in. And the diversity part of the conversation is, well, let's bring in some people who are different. The problem is that once you've done that, not everybody needs the same portion.
Exactly.
Not everybody can handle the same portion. Not everybody actually uses the same tools to consume that portion. And so some of what we're having to deal with is that this ugly truth is that there is a conversation we have to have around what it means to be a consumer. And what do we actually need to consume? And in many ways, a part of the DEI conversation that got too passionate, do it, Chris. People was like, I need to be at the table. The problem is when you got to the table, somebody told you what you was going to eat when you got to the table. And when you got there and you ate what they gave you, it didn't nourish you. When you got there, you realized you didn't have enough to be sustained at that table. And so now you're fighting at that table for more. And somebody's like, there's no more for you. And the people who are behind you was like, Johnny, you made it to the table. Can I have some too? So what then we do culturally? We give them some of the small portion that we got. And now you can't sustain you. You can't sustain the person that you are mentoring, you are trying to grow, and you're trying to teach what it means to be at the table. What if we stop fighting over trying to get to a table? Maybe there are multiple tables, which is why DEI can't exist in its current form. Because it's saying there is a single table that you have to now find how you are represented at, where you feel included at, and where you get to feel this sense of equity at. There's a whole lot more to go around. And if we're smart about it and we tell the ugly lie to ourselves, no. Is it the pretty truth? The pretty truth is you are capable of building a table too.
Here we go.
And if we actually start telling that truth, I don't need the acronym. I am the acronym.
There it goes.
And then I show up and I'm not now fighting for the scraps that somebody else has decided I should have. I'm using what God gave me to not actually build a table, but to build a pathway where more people can find them their way to harvest their own fruit, make their own meals, have their own chickens. There are some people who need to be at the table, and that's fine. And that's okay. And then there are others. We're like, well, wait a minute. We got to create some pathways for other people. Cool. I don't need to lie to myself anymore. I'm capable, fully present, can get done. So I like this, to me, is a strategic inflection point in our humanity. But let's be really clear. Much of this is an American conversation.
Yep.
Yes.
And if we were real honest about it, for Christian people like us, the Bible that I read says we're supposed to go ye therefore into all the world. And so while I think it is important in the country that we're in to do certain things, there is a mindset that I have to have that is inclusive of a whole lot more people than just the one who is sitting next to me. And if I'm not proximate to it, which is what we're going to talk about next month, it's easy for me to argue about 3 letters that may or may not affect me on a day-to-day basis. So,
okay. So we have figured out that CT tells pretty lies and ugly truths, and he's going to work on telling more ugly truths and accepting that there's a lot of pretty lies out here. Johnny is all ugly truths. She says that she doesn't tell pretty lies, even though she knows that she does, which is I pretty much lie about ugly things. That puts it all together, because like that puts pretty lies and ugly all together. So that just, for me, that's just the way I see it.
There's a song in there somewhere. We got to figure it out. There's a song in there somewhere. I don't know.
I hope not, because if we ever make that song, somebody may sue us because we may be talking about something. Because I only make music about people. I will make fun of made up people too. So like, let's make up somebody that we can make fun of with pretty lies and ugly truths. But if you got some other recommendations of people you'd like to make the song about, I'm all about that too.
Oh, I got somebody I want to make a song about.
I figured you did. That's why I threw that out there. Okay, we're gonna leave that for the
like in this really high seat in these places in the world. So
we're gonna leave that from behind the scenes to talk about, because whoever you talking about, I don't know right now, and I'm not going to infer. So I just want to leave this segment with knowing that we all enjoy the best parts of the winter and summer, and those parts we don't typically want to give up. And I would say the winter woes are typically when you got to go outside and it's cold. It's cold as the Dickens. We got another polar vortex showing up on us again. That's why Johnny's getting freezing weather in Texas.
I know.
Yeah, I love the frequency of polar vortexes now, because it does create a lot of winter woes. But I hope to God that it creates some summer. Oh no, you know what I mean? Where it's like, you go. Did you see what I'm sitting over here with? I ain't going nowhere. Oh no, I'm not going nowhere. I'm right here. I'm posted up. This is the spot. Because like when Johnny actually lets us come to her deck, like this summer, that's gonna be one of them oh no moments.
There we go. So real quick before we close out, I know there's a couple of questions that we didn't get to, and I know we're coming up on I don't know if we want to address them at a later time, or you want to hit it now, or what's
Go ahead,
up?
Johnny, go ahead.
let's do it.
So there was a couple questions. One was, my mama, there we go. Is your explanation from a corporate point of view when we're talking about DEI? What about, okay, somebody had to put on their glasses. What about production workers? And so those are like factory workers, production workers, right? That's where we're headed. I don't have an CT. Do you have an answer for that one?
Yeah, it applies across.
Yeah.
It applies across. And whether you're a production worker, I think it applies more to a production worker, because in those ecosystems, there is less voice. And oftentimes in a production environment, you have created what is called a union, where there is somebody who is speaking on your behalf. So inside of corporate organizations, you don't tend to find that you have a voice speaking for you. So you have to find your voice yourself. In those environments, oftentimes you do have a collective body of individuals who have a voice that they are using to speak for you. Now, let's just say you don't have a union. The truth still is that if you are in an environment or an ecosystem that has decided that your voice doesn't matter, DEI is in the structure that it was set up. DEI was supposed to be able to give life to your voice. And it wasn't, I used to say all the time, it's like when you give voice to something, it doesn't mean that now they have to do what you said. What they've done is validated that your voice is of value, that you've been heard. Mel said it earlier, I think. When you are sitting around in whatever ecosystem you're in, whether it's your relationship with your spouse or your kids, or if it's your home or your work, wherever it might be, when you are feeling unheard, what is happening into you, what's happening to you intellectually and emotionally, internally, is keeping you from bringing the very best of what you can offer to the world. But when you actually know that somebody heard you and can repeat back to you what you said, and can then say, you know what, Johnny, thank you. I appreciate what is it you said. We're not able to do that or do this. And if you're smart enough to say, and here's why, you don't need agreement. You need alignment.
Yes.
And so depending on where and what it is you're talking about, sometimes it's just a matter of being able to create a platform where somebody can actually articulate a thought that might create an environment where I disagree with you, but I can do so without being disagreeable.
Yes.
I don't have to argue the point. I can simply express the point. We recognize that we are on different pages, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very important statement you said that I think was relevant this week. So Mel asked the question, was the death of DEI because it became too inclusive? E, what do you think? You think it became too inclusive? And we were just like, yeah, let's throw everybody in there. Or do you think that contributed to it? Or what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think the death of DEI was a multitude of things. I do think it was in a sense framed up to be too inclusive, because when you think of how people framed up what people spent money on and what we focused on, like there was a lot of fringe things that DEI supported too that really had no real merit or anything, because it was just the fact that, hey, I'm somebody who wants to support this one thing, and I have a voice and I want to be heard. You like, but you want to paint strawberries blue. Like, that's what you want to do. Like,
I know,
because of DEI, you could fight for that. You could fight to turn strawberries blue because of DEI initiatives where people look, well, you have a point to have a voice. You like, but does it matter? Right? Like, so I kind of like, I'm not saying like, you can't have blue strawberries, but at the same time, what's the relevance of investing and so do I think, I think yes. I mean, I'm like, yes, because there's people now who can show up and be cats and be called cats because of inclusivity. Literally, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I identify as X. That's what inclusivity really developed, right? Where now it's, I can be anything and you can't tell me no because of inclusivity. So I agree. I think the over inclusiveness of DEI was ultimately like the stake in the heart, because it was like, yeah, guess what? Since everything matters, nothing matters.
Yeah. And yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess that's all I can say to that is I get what you're saying. Sometimes even now, and not necessarily even thinking of the context of DEI, but some things and issues are brought up. I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we fighting for here? What's happening here? And I don't know if it, and then sometimes I'm like, am I just too old? Am I getting old now that it doesn't, but I don't know. So
listen, you could create unnecessary fights. You'd be like, the rainbow doesn't have all the colors. You like, but the rainbow only needs to have like the 7 spectrum colors. I think we're good. We don't need any. No, but it doesn't have lavender and cayenne and you like, but but those are just colors that's
Yeah.
a part of the
Yeah.
spectrums that already exist. Like,
Yeah.
you're asking us to create more for no reason. Like, a
Yeah.
rainbow already represents every color based on the fact that that's what a rainbow is.
Yeah, sometimes I just say, you know what, this just isn't my fight,
That-
and that's okay.
That's exactly the point. That's the evolved place we've always been in since the beginning of time. The thing has been the thing. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. So if there's nothing new under the sun, what we're actually experiencing is a revelation or a newness in a thing that we already know. So if the color we've always known as blue, I now have new hues of blue. It's still blue. There's nothing wrong. That's my foundation. It's still blue. The argument people are trying to make is to say that it's not blue. No. What is blue? No, it's not blue. No, it's all of those things. We haven't figured out how to have this discussion that says it can be blue. And the most powerful word I think in the English language right now is and. Some people are like, this is how we've done it. This is what is right. This is how it has to move forward. And then there's another set of folks that are like, but I know something different than that. And my knowledge of that difference doesn't diminish what you know. If you're listening and you have the spirit and value of curiosity, you might actually figure out that it expands now what you know. And if you use more of this, everybody's better. But when we shut down our ability to to be curious, Johnny, well, why do you think that way? Or how is it that you came to that new recognition that this is a subset of this thing? And now that I know it, I'm actually better. So some of what I'm like, do y'all just not want to be better? Are you fighting so hard for the thing that has always been most comfortable for you? And I think I said a couple weeks ago, I saw a thing that said was the 7 most dangerous words. It was like, this is how we've always done it. Like, if this is how we've always done it and that's the right way, well, if I'm right, Johnny, and you're right, then who's right? And so we're living in this society where everybody's wanting to be right. I'm not interested in what's right. People used to say DEI is the right thing to do. No, it wasn't. No, it hasn't been. DEI was never the right thing to do. DEI was a thing that we needed to understand in the context of how it was being applied. And whether it was in production, whether it was in education, whether it was in corporate, what was its existence for? And if you have lost sight of its existence in the context by which it was introduced, you've lost its meaning, its purpose, its value, and its why. And when you've lost that, all you're doing is arguing with your point of view, your perspective, and nobody gets anywhere that way.
Okay. I love it. Do we have any more questions?
This was fun. This was.
I know, right? We dove in. I mean, we. Who gets to?
I think
divvy
you.
it out and
Why them?
Mama, the answer is the powers that be. They divvy it out to the metaphorical table that CT was talking about, that everybody's trying to rush to try to use DEI and other programs to create equity and equality for everybody at that specific table, is what he's referring to, where people are trying to go gain from one particular plate and all eat from one source of resources, whereas we don't have to. Like, the true point, and I kind of threw that out there in the beginning, is like, it's to create a table. You create your own table where the things that you care about are cared about over here, and you get your own investments and funding and all those things that support you to do the things you want to do. Now can't nobody come and do nothing because it's your table. Like, hey, this is us. We're not hurting nobody. We ain't stopping nobody. You can do whatever you want to do, but I'm gonna go build my own thing and have my own thing and do it my own way. And I don't need your table. And because I don't need your table, there's no threat to me for you to exclude me on anything, because I created my space. And that's really ultimately, where we're trying to go.
Listen, let's just jump right into final thoughts, and I'm gonna jump on that.
Go for it.
I'm gonna just come to right into final thoughts. I love that. And you can still work in an environment that has a table
Mhm.
while you are doing your own. Here's the thing. This speaks a bit generationally. There was this term that I heard somebody say one time and say, but I need my little old job. And because you need your little old job, because the choices you've made, you can't make big old decisions that can most impact your ability to influence your own DEI, your own ability to bring the diversity that you are, the genius, the uniqueness, the authenticity that you are into an environment where it doesn't yet know it needs what you have to offer. And you're not looking for somebody to be like you because there's nobody like you. So there's no need for equality. The blessing is the equity you show up with in the room actually makes the room better. So you can work in a place where there's a table and it can provide. But here's the thing, friends. It's time, past time, where people are only relying on one table to feed them. You're too brilliant. You're too amazing. There's too much inside of you that is getting lost at one table when in truth, you can give 65, 75, even go as far as 80, but then that other 20, somebody else needs that. Who's that somebody? You are the somebody that needs that. And we've become so accustomed and comfortable with giving all of who we are to one place. And then that place disappoints us. That place denies us. That place rejects us. That place says, you can't be that anymore. And now we feel offended. When in truth, nobody can tell you. Nobody can tell you. They can give you feedback, Johnny, but nobody can tell you how amazing you really are. You have to own that yourself. So my final thoughts on DEI is that you are DEI. You are the diversity. You are the equity. You are the inclusion. And if we want to get it right, we got to stop expecting somebody else to build it for us.
Love it. Love it.
Good stuff. Good stuff there.
Johnny, my leash.
I got a million thoughts going through my head. One for sure is that I don't want people to feel discouraged because I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, like, this ain't new, y'all. This ain't new. And if you feel like this is new, this is different, I just strongly encourage you to educate yourself and just realize that this is not new. And I don't want us to feel discouraged and feel like there's nothing that we can do, because absolutely there are things that you can do in your space, where you work, where you live, your community. You can still have an impact, and don't think that your work is in vain. Don't think that your work is not important, because it absolutely is. And it may feel like it isn't, because sometimes I feel like that. Sometimes I feel like this issue, because we said this in this conversation before, for me, this conversation is not about DEI. It's a larger conversation that we need to have as a country that we have not held ourselves accountable to yet. And I don't think we're going to solve that here today, even though CT said we're going to solve the world's problems. That one we didn't solve. That one we have not solved yet. And so there's still a lot of, there's some accountability that needs to happen. So we're going to still continue to have these conversations. However, your work is not in vain. Keep doing the work. Be encouraged. Yeah, that's what.
All right.
Good job.
I love that. Well, for my final thoughts, it's pretty simple and straightforward. I would say that DEI isn't really needed if we just loved each other despite our color. That would be it. Like, if we just loved each other despite our color as just a human race, and the fact that we spoke different languages and come from different places and have different experiences, we wouldn't have a need for any of this stuff, because it wouldn't matter, at the heart of it. Like, if we could go back in time and into, what was it, like the 1700s, and just remove the whole thing where they kind of like stood up races, something, and we just continued as humanity. Like that's an interesting parallel that I would think of. If race never was established in our cultures, like would we ever even need DEI? Would that ever have been something that would those narratives be the same? Yes, we probably would still have some of the same tragedies and problems that we've had, in history. I don't think they would be driven by the same narratives, but it's just interesting to think like, that's silly, Cam. I read that. I do like people. I'm not telling a lie, but I do think that we could love each other despite our colors. That's my final thought. Don't be coming for me.
Good, y'all.
This is a wonderful conversation.
Y'all did really good tonight. I'm proud of y'all.
Thank you, Johnny.
Are you?
Thank you, Johnny.
I want a lollipop.
Good job, guys.
Do we get stars?
You do. Gold stars. Gold stars.
I think this, like, the end of the day, like, people have to stop fighting about just having a real conversation. Like, let's just talk about it. We don't have to agree about everything.
Mel said she done talking.
Listen, I know she's ready for action. But Johnny, you said it though. People are in different levels, right? People are in different places, right? And it's okay that people are in different places. Just like find what you're supposed to do in the place that you're in and go do that thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Stop waiting for somebody else to prove or
Come on.
tell you what you are supposed to do. That's
yes. Don't worry about who's saying what and doing that. Do what you're supposed to do.
Go do a thing. Just go do what's the worst that could happen? You can fail. There is no failure. It's just it didn't work out the way you thought it would be.
There is failure.
You learned something. You learned something.
Failure.
There's not failure, Eric.
There's failure. You will never tell people there is no failure because
you need an episode.
Failure happens when you stop trying. So don't ever tell people there's no failure. Failure happens when you stop trying.
Different definitions. We need an episode on this one.
No, we ain't having that.
We can pull it.
You failed to convince me. I'm just
as you hear me still talking, so there is no failure. There's only I learned from the moment, and I'm still talking.
Hold up.
Still here.
Hey, Cam, just because this is what we've been doing today.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't you do it. Don't you?
Just because.
Look at you. This is
that ain't right. That ain't right.
Okay. No,
that ain't right.
I was wrong. Yeah,
that was a diversity, equity, and inclusion moment, friends. I need you all to see that. Somebody at the table behind the scenes. Thank you for the microphone. Somebody behind the scenes
their power
made a choice to use their power to exclude some. And here's the nuance.
Wait,
the nuance
it's not exclusion because I asked for it. That's what I want.
They think that they are, because they're putting me out front, means something other than what I'm trying to say, and it's not true. The truth of the matter is, in the truth of diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially in George Floyd time, what they did was they took a camera and they put Black people up front and they said, you be the person that tells the story of the struggle. And the challenge was when you made the screen just on that person, you built in exhaustion in the environment. So it was no longer about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was about a certain culture and a certain people who was demonized in a moment to be the people who had to speak for that people. And that was not okay.
That was not okay.
It was not okay. So thank you for making the point even more so.
Stop! No, bring her back, please. Not Johnny, my lead. Hey, listen, she'll quit. I'm sorry.
And I had a thoughtful point, but you know what? Forget it. I ain't got nothing to say.
No. Please don't do that. I'm sorry.
Did you see what just happened right there?
Hey,
I had a thoughtful point too, but you know what? Forget it.
Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. Ooh, Cam is in trouble.
Yeah, we in trouble.
Family, I need y'all to pray for Cam because Cam is in so much trouble.
Okay,
I don't know if he knows what just happened.
With that said, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow. There may be a week or two that we ain't here because we might be in the hospital due to my liege laying the smackdown on all of us for some reason. I didn't do anything, but apparently I started the whole thing, so I should take some responsibility. I'm a very accountable person. You have just had a whole conversation where we DEI'd this thing all the way until the end, where now we are in trouble. That just goes to show you that this conversation was, why do you put your glasses on? Don't be trying to run. Everybody's trying to like skedaddle now, right now. It's like almost somebody turned the lights on.
The show over. Let's just end it.
I know,
Night,
right? Like, look, see, Johnny, like,
y'all.
peace.
Tune in next week.
All right, see you next
We
week.
might be here. We might not.
Oh my God, we're in trouble. Please, you can chill to the next episode. Maybe if there is one.
Don't chill. Don't chill. It's work to be done.
Don't chill.
Don't chill.
Go to
work. Do your work.
Go to work. Do your work. That's what.
All
anything else? Anything else, my ladies?
Y'all do yours.
Oh man, I'm in trouble. We in trouble.
Don't
Hang up. Y'all should drop from the